Here we are, nice friends of ubitennis.com, ubitennis.net, ubitennis.s, and we have an honorable guest. I mean, a very famous Pat Cash, winner in Wimbledon. I will tell all the wins in a few minutes. We also have an Hall of Famer journalist, Steve Flink, who is my usual partner. He tries to do better questions than myself, but he's never successful, but he's still well, first of all, I should say a few things about you, Pat, because well, first of all, I should say not just what you want, but also how did I see you first? Because you may not know, but I was looking at you when you were playing the junior finals in Wimbledon for 2 years in a row. You didn't win the first one, but you won the second, and also the US Open. And then in 1983, which was the year after, you came to Florence, which is my hometown, and you played my tournament. You played my tournament. You beat Francisco Gonzalez in the first round, a Paraguayan player, 6-4, 6-3. Then you lost to Jimmy Arias, and Jimmy Arias went on to win the tournament, beating Cancellotti in the final. That was 1983, and you were not yet 18 years old, because the tournament was played in May, and so you were born in 65. So I remember you pretty well. You didn't wear yet the headband which made you famous and that your mother made for you when you played in Wimbledon. But well, those are my memories about you. I am not going to ask you your memories about me, and not about Steve Flink. We are not famous enough. But well, I remember when, okay, in 82, I think you played Sundstrom in Wimbledon. In 83, you beat Forget 6-3, 6-3. So what do you remember of those times? Because you were a junior, and well, you were unbelievably talented, because being 18 years old, you were able to win a final round, a final rubber in the Davis Cup 1 year later, if I am not wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I was, you know, I was very fortunate that we in Australia we had a lot of great players that came before me, and so I had some good mentorship. And I think in Florence, I think I might have played doubles with John Alexander. I think.
Could have been. John Alexander was, he did like very much my tournament, because nobody had to play before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and every night there was a party. And John Alexander did enjoy the party quite a lot.
Yeah, that would be right. That would be right. Maybe that's why we lost. I'll put it down to me being only 17 and inexperienced, but maybe it was him. But yeah, JA was obviously a very good doubles player, good singles player as well, and he was a great help for me. But yeah, I mean, it was you know, tennis was big back then. You know, lots of tennis clubs, lots of kids playing competitions. You know, it's changed a lot in Australia now. The club tennis is disappearing, unfortunately, and there's not as many people participating. But it was big, and I was very excited. My first ever trip outside of Australia was when I was 14. I was still 13, and I went to the Avvenire Cup in Milano.
Yeah, correct.
And it was a nations competition. So I had a partner, and who ended up winning the juniors. It was under 16s, and it was a very big tournament. And we arrived at this beautiful club. I remember, beautiful club. We'd never seen anything like it. It was as good as or better than Kooyong, which was, of course, where we held the Grand Slam, Australian Open. Then it was more beautiful. Swimming pools, restaurants.
Tennis club is called Tennis Club Ambrosiano in
Ambrosiano. There you go. And we looked at the board, and there was Winners Borg, and it was Lendl, Navratilova, and unbelievable names of these juniors winning. We're like, oh my good, you can win here. And the very first day I went out to practice with my friend, and we had a practice, and they said, "Can you share a court with somebody?" And we said, "Sure." And there was the kid who was almost getting onto the Swedish team. He was number 3, so we went and played with him. And there was 2 of us again, and one of him down the other end. This is the very first European boy I played with. And we played for 20 minutes, and he did not miss one single ball. Not one shot. And we looked at each other, me and my partner, and we went, "Oh my God, we are in so much trouble." Because this is number 3 player in Sweden. He doesn't even have a practice partner. He's not good enough to be on the team. His friends are playing the matches. And we thought, "Oh, we're in so much trouble." That person was Mats Wilander.
All right.
Yeah. So our panic sort of subsided a little bit, but we thought, "Oh no, we are so out of our league." And we didn't do very good the first year, but we came back. We won the next 2 years. Australia won the team competition. So we improved very quickly on the clay.
Well, Pat, out of the 16 top 10 players you beat in your career, just went through all of them. I saw that the one who beat more frequently is Mats Wilander. You beat him 4 times.
No, wasn't it 5? Ubaldo, 5.
You're 5?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
5-4, 5-4 for Pat.
Well, maybe he beat him once when he wasn't top 10. I'm talking about.
When he's in top 10, yeah. But overall, he had the edge, 5-4.
Okay.
Well, we're similar age, I suppose, and Stefan. But it's funny because you look at, we played in the Australian Open final, we played in the Davis Cup final. So he was one of my big rivals, Mats. Obviously, I had a lot of injuries, as you guys know, and didn't have a very long career, only a few good years. But, that was 9 matches. That was a lot. But we had a lot of exhibition tournaments. There was a lot of other events that were around the world that weren't sort of counted. But now, two rivals who were top 10 players playing 9 times. We're looking at, Djokovic and Nadal playing 70 times, Murray and, 60, 50 times. And I remember Murray saying, this is kind of boring playing the same guys all the time. And it was right. But we used to play, in Japan one week and then fly back all the way over to play an exhibition somewhere else and then play a tournament. And then, so we used to play quite a lot in exhibitions. But, I think even it was McEnroe and Connors, they still only played 20 or 30 times. But we're talking 60, 70 times these guys are playing now.
But Pat, why do you think it seemed like a good matchup for you against Mats? And certainly for the fans, it was a pleasure to watch the 2 of you with some contrasting styles. But how did you feel it? Did you feel the matchup was favorable to you in some ways?
Very much depend on the surface, I think. And I think it was more down to how I played. I knew how Mats would play. He would always be consistent. And, if I was attacking well, I'm the more the attacking player, a bit more erratic. And if my shots were going in, I thought I would win. But I knew Mats was always going to he was never going to make any mistakes. And I had to play well. If I didn't play well, I'd lose. If I played well, I had a chance to win. So, but it was a very interesting tour then because of so many different ball types, so many different court types, indoor courts, the outdoor courts. Some of the indoors most of the indoors were fast. Some of them were very slow. The surface that is out now was just starting to come in. The one that they play all the time on now, it was just starting to come in, painted on the boards. And we regarded that as very slow, and the balls would slow down. And of course we had wooden rackets or the beginning of graphite, but we didn't have the powerful strings. So these slow courts would mean extremely boring matches for everyone and very, very long rallies. And you just couldn't hit a winner because we just didn't have the power in the rackets and the technique as well, I suppose. We weren't as big. But so it was.
But you were playing. You were playing a lot of serve and volleys, so you were trying to shorten the points. And in a way, I was surprised that you lost the final at the Australian Open with Wilander in the first year that we played. You played in Flinders Park, and because of the rain, I think the end of the match was played under the roof, and under the roof you should have been favorite. It's not correct?
Well, look, in theory, I realized my chances of winning the Australian Open decreased as soon as I opened the tennis balls in December. They had a brand of tennis balls called Nassau, which was Korean ball. Now, if you remember this, the first year they had 3 years, but they had to have, for the Olympics, you had to use a ball that had been used in a Grand Slam. So the Australian Open sold their soul to this brand called Nassau, Korean ball. The first year they made the ball, it was terrible. It was soft. It was completely soft. And the ball, and it had no bounce, came off the court. So when we opened the can, I remember my coach, and Ian Barclay, we opened a can and we felt the ball. We said, oh, it's a bad can. We opened another one. Oh, that's a bad can. We opened another one. There's another bad can. And we called up and said, hey, listen, we've got all these balls. They're saying, no, they're all fine. We've checked, let's sign. We'll send you another basket, another box cracked open. No, that's bad as well. I said, oh, God, these are the balls. These are the balls. And they said they were going to change them at 9 and 11. So that would be, imagine the world's slowest balls on a quite fast court. And I had my hopes that any decent ball, I thought that I could win the title. But that, having those slow balls really neutralized.
I will check. I will check with Mats Wilander if he thinks the same, that he won because of the slow balls.
Wow. That's my excuse. I'm sticking to it. But I think that took away a little bit of advantage for me, for sure.
Yeah. But Pat, don't you think that what Ubaldo's referring to there, that first final at Flinders Park, and of course you played the last one at Kooyong against Edberg, but don't you think that that was maybe the best performance you had on the losing end, perhaps on the losing, because it was so tight, 8-6 in the fifth, right down to the wire. You led 2-1. Did you feel like, are you able to look back on that now and feel particularly proud of it, even though you didn't come through that day?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think I was very proud of that match. It was funny because the two Australian Open finals that I lost, and it sounds like I'm making a lot of excuses, but against Edberg, I had a tear in my shoulder, and if it was any other match, I would have defaulted. And I didn't think I could get a chance to win a set. And I lost a close 5 sets. And so I walked
from 2
off
sets
there.
down. You also were 2 sets down and brought it back to the fifth.
Yeah. So I was in big trouble, but I managed to get myself back into the match, just fighting. And I walked off that match disappointed, but I thought, well, I looked at my coach and went, wow. And in the end, I should have won the match, but I served, my shoulder was completely gone. I served double faults towards the end of the match, just one after the other, and lost the match. And Stefan, as you know, he's a pretty tough customer. He's not easy to break serve. So, and of course the first one at Melbourne Park or Flinders Park, I was very proud of the way I played it. We went all the way down the wire, played against, in the final, 2 good friends of mine. One Stefan I grew up with, and of course Mats, I talked about, knew him for a long time. And it's pretty rare, but we went out and had a drink. We didn't plan it, but we knew where we go. Went to a nightclub afterwards, and we had a drink together. And we had a good night. We hung out together, and I would say it's probably the last time 2 finalists in a Grand Slam hung out after the final.
But you say that happened by chance, Pat? That you didn't plan it, right?
We didn't really plan. We knew where we were going. We knew everybody went there. I found out that he was going there, and I said, let's go there and have a drink with the team. So it was sort of loosely planned, but I didn't know for sure he was going to be there. And we ended up hanging out and talking about the match and having a laugh. And my team was there, and we just drove. I was staying at home because I'm from Melbourne, and my coach, I think he had a few drinks as well. So
around Chapel Street and South Yarra, or somewhere else?
No, it was the top of Melbourne. It was called the Metro, so it was up on top.
Oh, I remember. Collins Street.
Yeah, Collins Street. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Burke Street, actually, but it's that's right at the top, near the Parliament House.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was where that was the only club really that was open around. Then everybody stayed in those hotels up the top there. So it was it was fun, you know. But I said I was proud of the way I played, and looking back at it, it really hurts when I come into Melbourne Park and I see all the names, and particularly during the tournament when they have all the walk of fame, I suppose, when the players come out to the matches, the centre court, and they have all the winners and the photos of the players of the winners, and I always think, it should have been me, you know. I was so close twice.
Listen, you had so many injuries everywhere, I would say. The shoulder, the back, the appendix. You tried all of them. The knees. I mean, you didn't save any part of your body. Do you think that was due to the fact that probably you started to play so young, and in times when let's say the medical staff were not so prepared like today? Because nowadays when we see all these players you know, being able to play at great level even when they are 36, 37, 38, and well, Federer almost free of injuries. Do you think that was something which wasn't done right when you were maybe 12, 13, 14, when your body had to, you know, to try all different efforts, and you were working always so hard that probably you asked too much of yourself?
Probably, yeah. You know, looking back and reflecting on these things, I think you're right. The medical, we didn't know as much and not have much knowledge as we do now, of course, about physiotherapy and that sort of thing. Though I did have a full-time trainer, well, not full-time, she was almost full-time, Dr. Ann Quinn, and she was a great researcher. So we found out all the best things that we could possibly do. But I think it's also a combination of, as my physio said, that she's the lady that rehabbed my knee and back, a lady called Jenny McConnell, and she's regarded as the greatest physiotherapist of all time. She's just redesigned all sorts of taping techniques. And she said to me, you just picked the wrong parents with your knees, you know, and just the way that your body is. You're very powerful, but there's certain things that, you know, the joints are very tight. And also biomechanics is huge. We didn't know a lot about it. That was an era where the biomechanics were changing. There was old school where you know, bend low and hit the ball in front and cross legs, side on stance, that sort of stuff, serve and volleying. Now, you know, if you look at Federer, his balance is phenomenal. His biomechanics, the way that he moves, I think a lot of it is natural, of course. But the players that are taught these days are taught correct biomechanics, balance, rotations, where to contact the ball, you know, and so they're likely to, they're always sitting on top of their body. They're stacked up nicely on top of their body, where we were sort of always lunging and doing all that sort of stuff. And of course, you know, the shoes were not great. You know, we were playing in very, very poor shoes as a junior. They were nothing. They were like little plimsoll shoes. It's things that you wouldn't wear on the boat or on the beach these days. We were playing 5 hours in the heat on the hard courts as, you know, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And so that doesn't help as well. So it just impacts the damage. But I mean, I think I've learned a lot about it. I've learned a lot. And I think it's a combination of everything. I couldn't put my finger on one thing. And I've studied and talked to a lot of people about this. And I think biomechanics is probably the number one thing, because Rafa and you know, we always thought, we never thought Rafa would get to 30, did we? We always thought he'd be retired or gone by 28, yeah, and he has had a lot of injuries, and he plays a different. Obviously, he plays from the back of the court a bit more, but it was that sort of explosive with the short abbreviated points that we used to play. It was sprint, lunge, back, forward, sprint. You know, it was very short and sharp and jerky sort of tennis. It wasn't fluid like you can do with Federer on the grass. Of course, the ball is bouncing up so high they don't have to lunge forwards to. So we played a lot of tennis on the grass in those days.
Sure. And listen, before Steve asked you if that match that you had lost was probably let's say the best match you played when you came out as a loser, even if as a loser. What about the other match when you had match point versus Ivan Lendl, and I was there broadcasting that match on the US Open, and I remember that incredible lob that Ivan Lendl made on the match point that you had after you had saved one. So
yeah,
that was an unbelievable day. I mean, for tennis.
Ubaldo and I, we weren't side by side that day, but we were not far apart. And he makes a good point, because first you're down match point, hit a great serve to his backhand, got out of it, and then you go up match point on your own serve, 6-5 in the fifth. And that would look like a really good volley, Pat, that you played, backhand volley down the line. And how stunned were you that Lendl came up with that topspin lob?
Yeah, well, I actually, when I hit the volley and I hit it cleanly, you can't tell on the video, but just for a second, I just gulped my breath. I went, oh, I won. Then and he, you know, I think he knew where I was going with the volley because it was open court, and he ran and hit just about a perfect lob. It was, yeah, that was a great, what a day of tennis that was. I mean, it's hard to argue that wasn't the greatest day. I mean, they called it Super Saturday for a reason, and it's hard to argue it's not the greatest tennis day of all time. And I was the only unknown player then, but the match was great. Yeah, that's another great match that I lost. So thanks for reminding me about that one.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but I'm sure I'm not the first one to remind you about that, because I mean, unfortunately, it was 16 sets, 12 hours and 13 minutes that day with Navratilova Evert, with McEnroe beating Connors, 51 games. Your match was 54 games, 3 hours and 39 minutes. I mean, so.
Did you feel like going into that, then even though he broke you still had a chance there, maybe a little mini break in the tie break against Ivan. How did you feel in the middle of that tie break? You still think you could win it?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I had the match point, so you feel like you're almost there. You can still go. And if I remember rightly, I missed a smash, which is very, very rare for me to miss a smash. Missed a smash in the tiebreaker, and I think that gave him the advantage. And I'd played Ivan at Wimbledon, and I sort of just copied McEnroe's tactics. You know, that was the bottom line. I just copied McEnroe's tactics. I liked the way that John played. I was kind of a baseliner as growing up as a kid, and I saw McEnroe and I said, look, that's the way sort of tennis that I want to play. I had a couple of guys early on the first year I was on the tour. They came in and attacked me all the time, and I felt the pressure. And one match I lost, and one match I won, but I was down. This guy came back and just attacked, and I went, man, this is the way to play tennis. It's just I'm going to play like McEnroe, just to put pressure on these guys all the time, and take control. You can take control of the situation. If they're good enough, then they'll beat me. But so I looked at McEnroe and I said, yeah, I'm just going to play the same tactics as McEnroe. Obviously, McEnroe was better, and he had left-handed serve. But I said, let's give that a shot. And that sort of cemented that tournament. I beat Mats, I think, in that tournament.
Yes.
Everything was just hitting cleanly, and I beat Gilbert easily and Mats easily. And I thought, okay, that's the way I'm going to play tennis from now on. So that was 84, and I just continued to play that for the rest of my career, really.
And you would have, Pat, gotten a crack at John if you would have beaten Ivan in that match. With that might have been some fun for you. I know you played him a few times at Wimbledon, and you did have one win over him, but how were you disappointed not to have the opportunity to play John in New York in the finals of the US Open?
Well, yeah. I suppose at the time I was very, really happy that I'd done so well. I didn't expect to do so well against Ivan, but then again, you're disappointed. Think, gee, I had match point. And the night, of course, we didn't have ice baths. We had, if I'd won, I would have probably got a massage and stayed there and had to do the press, media, whatever. But the next morning I woke up and I could not move, and I was absolutely exhausted. I would have been better. I'd done better post-match preparation, But John said to me, he said he came because he played Jimmy Connors after that and went 5 sets. So, you know, they didn't finish until, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night or something like that, 11 or 12, and had to play the next day. And, you know, it's usually a 6 o'clock match or something like that, wasn't it? Evening match. And he said to me, the next time I saw him, he said, thanks. He actually thanked me. He said, thank you very much for softening Lendl up for me. He said, I came into the locker room thinking I had no chance. I had to play this Lendl machine, and he was ready. He said, I was absolutely exhausted. And he looked over the other side of the locker room, and he saw Lendl, and Lendl couldn't bend down to open his locker. He had to get the coach or somebody to open the locker for him, and because he couldn't move. He couldn't bend down. And John saw it and went, oh my God, I've got a chance here. I've got a chance. And you know, if you're sore and you're playing McEnroe, though, he's got so much control. He just puts the ball right there, and you've got to be pretty sharp. So he did thank me. He said, thanks for softening him up. But when I saw Lendl couldn't move, I realized I had a chance.
Listen, I remember then I attended the press conference just afterwards. And that there was that question that made you angry, because there was some guy who immediately asked you why, I don't know, if you, who did you show your finger, or if you throw the rackets. I can't remember exactly what was the something that annoyed you, because you said, oh, come on, I've been playing a fantastic match for almost 4 hours, and the first question you asked me is that.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, you were, I mean, it was quite a, you know, you showed some kind of personality, because as you say, you were the unknown player at that time almost. I mean, you were, what, 84, you were 19 years old. I mean, so you weren't impressed. I mean, you were not shy for sure. That was clear.
Yeah, there was, I remember, because I had match point, Lendl hit the lob. The very next point, the next shot, I served an ace right down the middle, which would have given me a second match point. And the umpire called it out. And, you know, I stopped and I was yelling at, but Lendl had moved across to try and get the shot. And I was yelling, I was, you know, remonstrating with the linesman, saying, "You come on, that was in, you're crazy." And Lendl, for a second, thought I was talking to him. Okay. And that's what the umpire, that's what the reporter said. So anyway, I lost that point. I lost the game. That would have given me a second match point. Obviously, it was a massive point. And, you know, no Hawkeye back then in those days, but it was clearly on the line. I mean, even the replays on the TV showed it was easy, right in the middle of the line. Not even half. But so the reporter first said, he said, what did you say to Lendl? What did you yell at Lendl after that? And I was like, what do you mean, what? I said, what are you talking about? I didn't yell at Lendl. I wasn't, you know, that was started off a very interesting press conference.
I remember as if it was today, more or less. It was fun. Anyway, it wasn't funny for you, but anyway, listen, since we have been talking until now about some moments who were not those ones you would like to remember the most, maybe we should talk about Wimbledon 1987. What do you think? I mean, should we mention
happy
that?
to talk about that. Yep.
So first of all, not many people remember that you lost only one set in that tournament, and you lost it to Michael Schapers, the Dutch tall guy. While when you beat Guy Forget, I remember Guy Forget coming out and saying, hey, look, if this guy plays like this, he's going to win Wimbledon. And at that time, nobody thought he was right, because you still had to play Mats Wilander, you had to play Jimmy Connors, and you had to play Lendl in the final. But it was true. You beat everybody so easily. That is really impressive. I don't know what you were thinking at the end of those matches. If you are seeing yourself as suddenly a favorite of the tournament, or someone who was playing, putting miracle after miracle.
No, I thought I'd win the tournament before it started. The only person I was worried about was Becker. I thought everybody else I would beat. I think that the Shapers match knocked me really into form. I was in good form, but it was the the weather changed, became very hot. Remember, it was raining, and then all of a sudden, the first few days of Wimbledon, it just became incredibly hot, and the grass became very fast. I got through a couple of tricky match. The Shapers one was quite tricky, but going into the tournament, I really did think I was going to win the title, and it was a matter of
which in a way wasn't this a little bit presumptuous, because you hadn't won so many tournaments before. I mean, okay, you had played well again already in Australia and things like that in the Davis Cup, but I mean, to think to be the favorite or to win the tournament, I mean, in all your career, because of injuries and all different reasons, I mean, you didn't win 50 tournaments. So,
well, it was a progression. I played well in the Davis Cup final 6 months before on the grass. Came through some tough matches there. We beat Sweden in Australia. I played well at Wimbledon the year before, but as I said, I had my appendix taken out 1 month, a few weeks before that. My appendix taken out, and yet I got through to the quarterfinals, and I sort of
lost to LeConte.
To LeConte, and I thought it was that. After that, I went, you know what? It was because of the operation that I was in. I was hospital only a few weeks beforehand, and I ran out of. But I said to myself, I'm going to become the fittest player in the world. And I'm never going to run out of gas. I'm going to be super strong, and that's when I went up another level in professionalism. I got Anne Quinn to do full-time training. I got the nutrition right. I did all the things. I just took it to another level to make sure that I would never be tired, even though it really wasn't my fault that I had the operation. But so it was a gradual progression, and little did I know that only just over a year after I won Wimbledon, that I break my Achilles tendon, and that was sort of the beginning of the end. But I had some big matches. I played an Australian Open final. I'd won a Davis Cup, and there's no more pressure, as you guys know. There's no more pressure than playing a Davis Cup. Well, it used to be no more pressure than playing a Davis Cup away or home. Home is a crazy pressure. You've seen loads of players crumble, cannot play because of the pressure of Davis Cup, expectations of the home crowd, and the other way around. You play away from home, and the crowd can get to you and yell and scream. So I felt I was
before we get off of Wimbledon. Sorry, Pat, for interrupting, but I just don't want you to leave Wimbledon quite yet, because just tell us, do you think you peaked more against Connors or Lendl? They both were such impeccable performances. I remember thinking at the time, a lot of us were saying I don't think we'd seen anybody volley that well consistently for 3 sets the way you did against Connors, and then you pretty much sustained it against Lendl. Compare those two matches and the satisfaction you got out of each.
Well, I've got to be honest and say that it was probably the draw probably suited me. As I said, the grass was getting fast. I was coming into great form. Lendl wasn't confident. He was a serve volleyer only because he had to. He didn't really he preferred to stay at the back of the court. In those days, the grass was too fast. You could not, unless you were Borg. Connors did it, and Borg, you could possibly win at the back of the court on a fast grass court. But, I even think, in McEnroe, when McEnroe beat Bjorn, I think that changed in 81? That sort of changed. The attacking player became a little bit more powerful, even than, before with Newcomb and Ash and those sort of guys. And it was just almost impossible to stay at the back of the court. And then had Jimmy, who was 35, and he was playing great tennis. But Mats was, again, another guy who served and volleyed because he had to, not because he wanted to. So the draw was pretty good for me. And some of my friends, some of my tennis buddies often point that out. They say, you got a great draw to win Wimbledon. I said, yeah, I got a great draw, but I had to beat number 1 player in the world, number 3 player in the world, number 7 player in the world in a row. I said, they're no mugs. Sure, they prefer to play on other surfaces, but I play some good players. But you got to take your opportunities when they're there. And I think the mental thing was huge for me. And I had a sports psychologist, and I think he was the first sports psychologist on the tour. And he traveled with me most of the bigger events and around the bigger events. And that was a big help to me, to be prepared, to be calm when I walked onto the court, and be prepared for anything that would happen. Whether it was, and that's we know in tennis there's so many things that are unexpected, and there could be the bad line calls in those days. It could be the guy making a comeback. It could be slipping over on the court. One of the things most people didn't realize, and I don't even know if they realized it, I don't know if you guys realize this, but when we played the semi-final and we came back the next day to play, or the next day after to play the semi-final, at that stage the court was become really brown and it was fast, but it was brown, but the grass was okay. When we walked on the court was green. The court was green, and I looked at the court and I was like, what's going on here? What they'd done is they'd taken grass shavings from another court, or a court that they didn't use or something, green grass shavings, and they put them all over the court to make it look.
When have they done it? In the middle of the night? How could they do it?
So this was before the semi or the final?
Before the final. So the court had become incredibly slippery. It was like playing on clay. All of a sudden, you had all this loose material all over the top of the court. And if you have a look back at the match, you'll see us slipping all over the place. We were sliding into shots like it was a clay court. I'd come in and I'd just slide into a volley. And I never hadn't had to do that the whole tournament. All of a sudden, I had to adjust everything. I slipped over about 4 times. If you watch the match, I was just falling over, spun around. So, but I was a little more agile than Lendl, and I think in a way that helped me. But that was really, really tough to play on. When you come on, all of a sudden the grass court is completely different than a grass court I'd ever played on in my life. No, because you have slippery grass courts, but you don't have slippery surface on the top, a loose surface on the top. You have a slippery grass, then it goes green, then it goes nice, where there's some slippery on the outside, and then it goes brown where it's really good, and then it breaks up and it gets dry again. So in a grass tournament, even a week tournament, there's 3 different types of movements, and you have to adjust for. And this was one that I'd never had to deal with ever before. And it was, to me, I just couldn't believe. What are they doing? And I realized it was just to make the court look nice on TV.
Well, Pat, when you won it, you started a tradition that Ubaldo and I have watched ever since, going up into the stands. Did you ever think that this was going to become standard fare, that almost all the champions who followed you would start to celebrate the way you had, because nobody had really done that before you? How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess I did think everybody would start doing it. I'd never seen it in any sporting event. Sometimes you saw the crowd run onto, you saw Yannick Noah in the French Open, where the whole crowd ran onto the centre court there after he won, and his father ran down onto the court and all that. But I'd never seen an athlete jump into the stands before, and I couldn't. And I thought about it a few months before. So why hasn't anybody done that before? I thought I'll do that. And I know you're saying but it was in April. About April, I was like, yeah, when I win this year, I'm going to do that. I was that confident that I was going to win, and it was only but I didn't think about it again until the night before, and I was like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to go up. After I win, I'm going to go up, and that's all I thought about. And then because what was important for me is, a bit of back history, as you guys know, as I was a young father, the age of 21, I had a son. I'd had some injuries, a couple of injuries, so I had a team around me. I had the sports psychologist, I had the full-time trainer. I had a very good friend. My sister was there, my father, and the family support. When you're a 20-year-old and you realize, it's maybe you realize that you're having a baby with your girlfriend, and you need that support. And my son was born on my birthday, on my 21st birthday. So that was a sign, I think, from God to say that I made. He was a blessing. And we shared that birthday a couple of days ago, of course.
I saw the picture of you. I saw the photo between you and David, who came to celebrate, I think, your 55 years old birthday, correct?
Yeah.
Wearing very elegant, you both.
Daniel, that was That was during his wedding. Yeah, that's about the only time I get dressed up. Was his wedding. But so I had a team up there, which was really the first big team. I mean, now it's common. We see Djokovic with 6 or 7 people and Federer with 4 different nannies, all that sort of stuff. We didn't have that then. We didn't have that then. We had to pay for our own hotels. We had to pay for our own air flights, everything else. So, this was a very important for me to say thank you to my team. So it was partially, it was partially joy or relief that I won, but the main thing was really to go up there and say thank you to my father, my coach, my trainer, my sports psychologist, my sister, the really important people that were there in my life. And of course, my girlfriend was up there as well. Little baby Daniel was in the creche. He didn't know what was going on, but so that was the main reason. And it didn't make sense to me why nobody had done it before. So I thought, I'll do it if nobody else has done it. But I got in a bit of trouble. I got in some trouble because I kept the royal family waiting. So
the royal family waiting, and the roof. You weren't so sure that he could. That the roof could hold you, because I mean, how did you know if you could stay up there, it wouldn't fall down? That's everything.
Right. That's right. I had to go in a commentating booth, and I wasn't sure. It didn't look like, it's not a real building. It's just a little roof, and I wasn't sure. In those days, they had this standing area, and people probably don't realize or forgotten that. At 12:30, remember the bell? They used to ring the buzzer, the bell, bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
People would go in, they'd get their ticket, they'd line up for 2 days to get their ticket. They get the first ticket, and they could run and stand in that standing room area on the center court all day. And it was an area, quite a big area, maybe 20 meters by 10 meters, and they could stay all day. But that was behind the first few rows of seats. It was really strange. It was like they cut a circle out in the middle of the front row and took all the seats out so people could stand there. And when I started walking up, I walked over the first few stairs and I was like, oh my goodness, there's no more stairs to climb on. So I was trying to find my way up. And then this is absolutely 100% true. I was trying to get up and I heard a voice. I'm looking like this going, I heard a voice saying, "Stand on my shoulder, my son." And I was like, and I looked down and it was a priest. It was a priest with a priest. It said, "Stand on my shoulder, my son." And it was a young priest. And I was like, thank you. So I stood on his shoulder and I got onto the commentating booth and I got up. And years and years later, this guy came up to me. He said, "Remember you stood on the shoulder of the priest?" He said, "Yeah, I've got photos of that." I said, "No way." He said, "Yeah, because I was the priest." And I looked at him. I thought, "What?" He said, "I wasn't a priest. I just dressed up as a priest. I just put it on." It's crazy. And it was a stinking hot day. He was dressed up as a priest. A very strange guy, very strange, very nice guy, but he has all these photos. He said, "I took the photos because I was the priest." I'm like, "You're insane." He said, "Yeah, I used to do funny things. I was a bit crazy back then."
Pat, you alluded to the Davis Cup. Talk about 1983 and particularly 1986, but then go back to 83. Because 86, you won all 3 points. And that was a remarkable effort to win 2 singles and a doubles. Talk about what that meant to you in the context of your career.
Well, I would have to say that every guy that in those days, they would look at their schedule, and your schedules are always done after the US Open in September. You have to delegate which tournaments you would play. You'd hold 1 week before the Davis Cup week for practice and the Davis Cup week. So there'd be 2 weeks. That was the priority. You knew where the Grand Slams were. You just wanted to know who we playing in the Davis Cup, because whether I have to go all the other side of the world and come back, or stay in Australia, or whatever you had to do. So there was a massive amount of travelling involved being an Australian, but that was the main priority: the Davis Grand Slams and the Davis Cup. I mean, the Davis Cup is massive for Australia, and it still is massive in Australia, and we know it is massive in Italy. Italians love the Davis Cup. The Americans, I think, did love the Davis Cup. I blame Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras for ruining that. I really do. As much as I love Andre and Pete, I think they're amazing players. Agassi saying, "I don't want to play Davis Cup," was the first time we'd ever heard that. Philippoussis said, "Oh, okay, well, if they don't play it, I'm going to play it."
Jimmy Connors was even worse. I mean, Connors didn't want to play Davis Cup ever. He played once, you remember, in Sweden in 1984, and him and McEnroe, they drove Arthur Ashe crazy.
Yeah,
and
well,
they drove each other crazy too, Ubaldo.
yeah. Well, they had a clash of personalities, so it was slightly different than, you know, I don't want to be involved with these guys, than opposed to I don't want to play for my country. I think if John wasn't there, I mean, I think Jimmy would have played every match, you know. But John was so passionate about playing Davis Cup. But Davis Cup was huge for us. So there was the highlight of my career. I mean, I look back at my career and I say, you know, what did I really want to achieve? And I wanted to win Davis Cup for my country, and I wanted to win Wimbledon. That were the first two things I wanted to do. And then I wanted to win the Australian Open. That was, and possibly the US Open. French Open, I realized that my style wasn't likely to do that. And, you know, I came very, very close in a very short career to doing that. But Davis Cup was Neil Fraser, who was the legendary captain after Harry Hopman, as you know. For many years. Australia had been in the semi-finals or better every year except for one that he'd been there, and he was very proud of that fact. That Australia always had a great record, even though, you know, there was some years that we didn't have great players. And he said, "I want you there a week early every time." And we said, "No problems. I'm there a week early." There'll be exhibition matches, people throwing money at us, at me particularly. I was the number one guy. It didn't matter. It was all about getting there and being for the Davis Cup and being with your mates and Australians growing up in team sports, cricket and Aussie rules football, etc. We loved our team sports. So we had such a good time. And there's so many great guys, Wally Masur and Darren Cahill and Woodford and Kratzman and these sort of guys. They were just great people to be around. John Alexander, of course, Edmondson. The Maccas, the Super Macs. Unfortunately, we're missing one of them now. Peter's gone, but Peter was a great hero of mine. He was one of my first heroes I could actually touch. It was John Newcombe, you know, he was a god, but Peter McNamara was a local boy. I could see him practicing on the courts at Kooyong, and he actually grew up and started in the same church, Catholic church courts that I hit my first tennis ball on. Literally 3 tennis courts. We basically had our first tennis lessons there. So and Peter was a great Davis Cup player as well. The Super Macs were a great doubles team. So it was a great history of that.
So how do you feel now about the recent Davis Cup? I mean, when I speak with Bertolucci and Panatta, they say don't call it anymore Davis Cup. That is not Davis Cup. But this is a little bit what I always hear from the players who played the previous traditional Davis Cup. But now, was it the only thing to do? Did you suggest different things? And between Davis Cup and ATP Cup, okay, Australia is supporting a lot ATP Cup because it favors the Australian season, the Australian Open, and so I understand why the Australian took that direction. But you, who have been living with the old traditional Davis Cup, how did you react to what's going on?
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah. How much?
Please do.
When I heard what was going on, no, it's not the Davis Cup. It is. I mean, I think it's a great team competition what we have now, but it's not the Davis Cup. The whole challenge, the whole concept of the Davis Cup that we had, and it has changed over the years. Of course, we had the challenge round where the winner would stay into the winner from the last year would automatically be in the final, and the other teams had to compete to play them off. But that changed. But it was still the home and away, and the challenge of playing home and away, and traveling with the team, and having those challenges, playing best of 5 sets. Some of the greatest matches in the history of our sport have been in Davis Cup over 5 sets in a deciding match. Cilic would speak the same. Del Potro would say the same thing. They played their last matches 5 sets, and to win a Davis Cup. And I would say the same thing for me. 2 sets to love down, I came back and won the last match. Some of the greatest matches, and without a The number one match that people in Australia remember me for was winning the Davis Cup final, the last match being 2-0 down against Michael Pernfors. More than anybody, Australians came and said, I remember that day as a kid. And Leighton Hewitt was the same thing. He said, I was an inspiration for him. You know, how can you inspire tennis in a country that doesn't hold, that the national heroes don't come to play? You know, at least the Davis Cup, home and away, you have a chance every year of seeing your team at home. Now you have one chance, the toss of the coin, the very first round. Then you don't see your heroes. So if you're unlucky and your nation goes through the semi-finals for 3 years in a row, your country will not see any of your Davis Cup heroes for 3 or 4 years. Not one kid can see your Davis Cup.
So, but what could have been done differently? I mean, okay, I do agree with all you're saying, but it's also true that the Davis Cup was more or less dying. I don't know if it was because of the players, because of the ATP tournament who wanted to pick all the possible weeks. I don't know, for many different reasons. Every time there was a Federer winning the Davis Cup, he didn't play anymore afterwards. Wawrinka, same thing. Murray, okay, once or twice. You know, so what could have been done to make it different?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't completely agree with you to say it was dead. I think a lot of the matches were dead. But when you're playing in Lille in France in front of 20,000 people in a final, that's not dead. When we played in Australia, there was always big crowds. The biggest problem was, and I've said this to Brad Druitt, who was a former, the president, and was a Davis Cup buddy of mine. Of course, Brad's passed away, but he was the president of the ATP. And I said to him, and this is before Federer and Rafa had really come across with a great rivalry, and Novak and Murray weren't quite there. Neither was Wawrinka. It was one-man show, two-man show. And I said, you ATP have done a really good job at marketing a poor product. I said, he goes, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, players all play the same. They all look the same other than Federer. Exclude Roger Federer. I said, no, they have no personality. All the tournaments are the same. You market it as if it's the greatest thing of all time. Nobody gave a shit about getting to the finals or being number one in the world. Now it's the most important thing in the world. Players talk about becoming number one player and number two player. I said, you've done a great job at marketing this. You're marketing this tour unbelievably well. The opposite is with the ITF. They did no marketing for the Davis Cup. They should have given every tennis club in the world videos of Davis Cup stories, posters, put them everywhere. The kids grew up wanting to be ATP player or number one player in the world. They see them all the time. They didn't grow up to say, I want to be Davis Cup. What's that? What's that? Oh, that's when you play for your country. There's a little book in the corner of the club. Read that. It should have been posters everywhere. Our Davis Cup heroes, Laver and Newcomb and, Italian had some great Davis Cup heroes. If they'd done any marketing other than that one city where you played the tournament, the Davis Cup would be alive and thriving because players would want to play, kids would want to see the Davis Cup, they'd want to want to grow up wanting to play Davis Cup instead of going, what's Davis Cup? I just want to be number one player because I see it on Twitter and Rafa and all these things. The ATP had done a great job at marketing a very, very average product for long years. It's a good product now. But for a lot of early years, they did a great job, and the ITF did a pathetic job. Absolutely ruined it for everybody.
But Pat, how do you feel about this now? The fact that we've got, to follow up on Ubaldo's point, 3 team competitions: Laver Cup, Davis Cup, ATP Cup. And Djokovic, in fairness, really seemed excited in the ATP Cup when he led Serbia to victory, and in Australia, and they had crowds behind him. But how do we sort out those events for the public so that Davis Cup does not get diminished?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Davis Cup, I've got a couple of theories on that. First of all, the ATP Cup is the best format, without hands down. That's the best format. That's why it was so popular. So whether the players will accept the ITF to change the format to make it 10 days or 12 days at the end of the year, I'm not so sure about that. I don't think they will. So the Davis Cup has got a substandard format at a substandard time of the year in the wrong city. It's December. It's cold. The Australian team came back and said, we played a couple of fantastic matches. 2 matches, one on court one on court two. We had 300 people watching one of them. We had 200 people watching the other match in Davis Cup. If we were at home, we would have 10,000, 5,000, 10,000 people watching. We come all the way to Madrid, freezing cold, middle of winter. The fan to go and watch the Davis Cup, you would have to have from Australia. You would have to spend at least $5,000 to get there. At least $5,000, and then hotels and tickets and airfares and everything. You wanted to bring a friend. It'd be you can't do it. So it's a bad time. It's not the best format. It's not the best time. The Labour Cup, it's exhibition. It always has been in my mind. And if you have to pay players $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 to pretend that they're really excited about a format, I've never watched. I've actually watched a few highlights, but I never watched it. But it just has no interest to me. The European team is so much more dominant. The international team is the top player was Isner at number 20 last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. Let's call it what it is, and it's a very, very good, well-run exhibition event, which is entertaining and great. And let's hope it continues. I think the players, the fans seem to like it, but it is not Davis Cup. So I think the best format. The only thing that I believe that the ITF can do is to find the right week. And the right week is the same week as the Labour Cup. That's the best week. In a normal year, okay? We don't know about what's not this silly year, but in a normal year, the best week is post-US Open where the Labour Cup is. Now, the big problem is, how do they get to move to the Labour Cup? And they can also push it out maybe another few days. How can they get it to, well, they have to have everybody voting for that. Now, that comes to politics, and we know about that. Some of the politics, Tennis Australia has invested heavily into the Labour Cup, putting millions and millions into the Labour Cup. They're certainly not going to vote for the Davis Cup, as much as we love Davis Cup, to be moved to take over the Labour Cup. So I don't think the ATP Cup is the right time of the year either, to be honest. I think that there's a couple of weeks, and the Labour Cup holds out the best week of the year, I think. And somehow they're going to be manoeuvring or not manoeuvring around there. When Federer is retired and gone, then there may be the possibility to move it away. But until then, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. Listen, talking about nowadays, first of all, I didn't ask you, how did you react? How was yourself and your family with the virus? I mean, did you have any problems? So you were in London and now in California. How do you react to that? How do you fight against that?
Well, do you want to know? I've spent the last probably 4 to 6 weeks reading every single thing I possibly can about this virus. I'm fascinated. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. Okay. I've read every podcast. I've read all the scientists. I don't know if you want to really hear my beliefs, but
yes, we do. We do.
Right. It all started off in Italy, right? And mainly it didn't actually start in Italy, of course, but it mainly started off in Italy, and that's when the panic set in. Now, unfortunately, the older generation had been given a flu vaccine, which is a faulty flu vaccine. It's been taken. To create the vaccine, you have to create any vaccine, you have to have some of the virus or whatever it happens to be in the injection. Correct? Right. Yeah. So they had to extort that from an animal, and it wasn't tested. So when the virus was given to when the vaccine, and this is 100% correct, no vaccine has been proven to work for a virus. None. The major virus you've ever heard of is called HIV. There's billions, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Do they have a vaccine? No. There's no vaccine for a virus. It's as simple as that. It doesn't work. But they give you the vaccine. It can sort of help. So in theory, it can help submit your virus, the reaction to the virus. Unfortunately, when you give a bad one to an older generation and then the virus comes, it will kill a lot of people. And there's the statistics. The statistics are just add up and up and up. Viruses don't work. Vaccines do not work. What they're putting in it is mercury, aluminium, a combination of all sorts of strains of virus into an older generation. It will completely react and kill everybody, kill the people. So the younger generation, the latest, the stats have just come out that 0.02% of healthy people die from the virus. 0.02. Now the virus, they say, is 1.4% of people die from the virus. It's not even that high. What have we got is a bad flu and an overreaction. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of people who want to claim to create a virus and make money, and vaccines do not work. They do not work. The best vaccine they have, it takes 4 or 5 years. If you read the podcast on these experts,
maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe up to man.
4 or 5 years. So what are we going to do? In 4 or 5 years, we're still going to be working on this coronavirus. It's going to be mutated into something else. So vaccines don't work. We've got the flu. The best way to get it is for everybody to get it, but you have to stay healthy. I mean, that's the bottom. Zinc, the immune system has got to be boosted, and that's with a clear.
So So Pat, do you almost support the theory of Djokovic, who says no vax? Are you almost
no vaccine? Yeah, no vaccines don't work. They just don't work. They simply do not work for viruses. It's, as I said, the main virus has been HIV, and they haven't got a vaccine for that. I've been traveling over US passport, so I'm over here coaching Brandon Nakashima, the young US top junior. We're waiting to get on the circuit. None of us have wear face masks. I've never seen anybody wear a face, other than we have to go into a supermarket here in the US. But in the UK, they're not really using them much either. And masks. The small stats to show that masks do not work. Absolutely do not. All they do is make you sick because you're breathing in your own carbon monoxide. Unless somebody sneezes in your face, you won't get. You need a mask. That's the only reason. When surgical masks are for surgeons who don't want to sneeze into an operation. When they're cutting somebody open, they don't want to sneeze or breathe in there. Once it's finished, they throw it away and they don't use it again because it's containing all sorts of I'm going to say the viruses, but it's contained your breath and everything else. If you have anything, it's going to multiply out of the mask. Anyway, I don't want to go on about it, but we've got a bad flu and we've got a massive overreaction, and we'll find out in time that, now they say, remember you couldn't touch any metal because you get the virus. Now they say that doesn't work. The stats for healthy people are next to nothing, under 50. The Swedes have said the same thing. 98% of people who contract the virus have little to no symptoms at all. 98%. That's the Swedes, and they've had it open. So I just think unfortunately it's a real beat up by the media who don't have the facts and are not willing to listen to the facts. And as much as I hate Donald Trump, I think he's kind of got some of this right. Hydroxychloroquine works. It is one of the essential products that you take around the world. It's worked for SARS and it's worked for Ebola. It's a product, and that works. And then unfortunately, everybody's got to get touched by this virus in some form or other. And the best thing to do is to be healthy.
Okay.
Sorry, that's my raves. Anyway, I don't care about it. I have not worn a mask. I've worn a mask twice. I've been playing tennis. I've been going on my merry way. My girlfriend had got the virus. She was not very sick. She was sick. She lost the taste in her mouth, everything. My son got it as well. He was okay after a few days. So I've probably been exposed to it, but I have no symptoms whatsoever. Maybe I've just got a strong immune system, but stay healthy, do exercise, eat the right foods, take zinc, take vitamin C and vitamin A and D, and you'll be fine.
Okay.
So there you go.
Listen, let's change subject for
I'm not a doctor. But I've done more research than a lot of the politicians, I'm telling you, as you can tell.
Yeah. Since you're not a virologist yet, I mean, I want to ask you also about a quote that I read. I don't know if you said it recently or a long time ago. The quote was, Djokovic is a normal guy. Federer and Nadal, they are not. Is that something that you said so many years ago that now is not anymore actual, or you remember to have said that, or I have a wrong info? Or maybe you were saying in some, I don't know.
I don't remember saying that, but and it certainly wouldn't have been in a negative way. I think what we have here is, and I've said this, and a lot of people take it sometimes the wrong way, but you know, and I say Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic is included. They're all freaks of human. They are not normal people. They are not normal human beings. Nobody can do what they do and be human. They are supermen, superhumans in some form. I really don't know how they do it. And it takes, for people to be that successful, it takes a certain mentality, and it's not a normal mentality. And you have to be obsessed in some way or some form. Andy Murray's the same. He's not a normal guy. He's obsessed, and he wants to be the best that he can possibly be. And that takes obsession. I know, because I've been extremely obsessed. I was obsessed by absolutely everything I ate, and the team that I put together. I wanted to get me better here, psychology, trainer, all this sort of stuff. I was obsessed, absolutely. So I think people who are the top level of anything are obsessed. You guys are the best journalists in the world. Let me tell you, you're obsessed by stats and results and these things that you've come up with. I couldn't possibly remember. To be the best, you have to have some form of obsession, and I think these guys have an obsession, but they're also superstar athletes and want to. I mean, what's not normal is how these guys are still fighting after 15 years of playing each other. And they still want to get, I mean, these records are just outrageous. 20 Grand Slams, 19 Grand Slams. Rafa's won. I mean, who would have thought that anybody would catch Federer? I mean, it's just crazy. And then Djokovic is probably the one more likely than anybody to catch them all. I mean, this is insane tennis. I mean,
Pat, how do you look at it right now? The three of them, in your estimation, your judgment, which of the three is the greatest player? Not just on record, but on ability.
Oh, well, yeah. Look, it's. I think Federer is one of the players that could have transcended any generation, with any rackets, any courts, with any equipment. He would have been number one player whenever he picked up a tennis racket, whether it was the 1920s or now. Rafa and Novak have created something new, particularly Rafa with the light rackets and the strings. The way he can play on the clay. The clay is just absolutely phenomenal. There's no doubts about it. And Novak is up there and taken that to a level where he can do that on any surface. The way the Rafa plays on grass I don't think he'll ever beat Roger, and other than on clay. Now it's the way that his court positioning, and I think that's proven to be so. It's the players that I like to watch the most. I mean, I think Federer and Nadal will probably be about equal. Probably Federer edge, to just pure enjoyment because he comes to the net and he can volley. He's so elegant the way he moves. Who is the best player of the lot? It's Djokovic. It's clear, and it's this guy is he's a freak. He gave him a big head start too, and he's caught up with them. And they're playing the best players in the world on their surfaces. It's just hard to go past the reality of head-to-head wins. I mean, you can't. I mean, I know Federer. Everybody says Federer is the greatest of all time. He's not even the greatest. He's not even the second greatest in his own era. I mean, that's hard to believe. It's hard to believe because you look. If you're the best of all time, you've got to at least be the best. Have a head-to-head record against your number one rival or number two rival. Surely that would be the very first thing you would say. Now, as a shot maker, I'd say he's the greatest player I've ever seen in shot making and movement and everything else. But I think the court surface in many ways he's a little bit old school. He developed a more attacking game on a surfaces and with balls that really don't suit him. So for him to be able to be successful on slow indoor courts, slow grass courts, with heavier balls than in my generation. It is phenomenal that he's actually got the record that he has. But, we can only say what we see in front of us, and that is that Djokovic has the best record of them all and is closing in. And other than Clay, of course, forget about Clay. Rafa's a god. I mean, it's just insane what he does on the clay.
But you put a lot of stock. That's interesting about the head-to-head, Pat. And one of our fellow journalists, I won't mention his name, Ubaldo and I know him well, said to me at one point, well, this was 4 years ago when Novak beat Roger in the semis, the Australian. And, he was starting, he had beaten him in the finals of, he'd had that great run against him, having beaten him at Wimbledon, the Open the year before, and at Wimbledon the year before that. He was really turning it at that point. And my friend said, well, but look, Roger's so much older. I don't buy that, because when Novak was young, he was taking on the chin from Rafa and Roger. He had to deal with that, right? Don't you think you just have to look at the totality?
Yeah, look, I think you both know that. I think to say that who the greatest player of all time, you have to know the history of the game. You have to know that, Rod Laver. It's often I quite often get asked this question, and I mention these talks, and I said, well, Rod Laver won 11 Grand Slams, but he was banned for 6-7 years of the major part of his career. And I said, and he won 4, and then he won 4, and in between he was banned. And people go, oh, whoa. I said, in those 6 years, how many Grand Slams do you think we would have won? We would have won at least 2 a year. So that's 4, that's 6, that's 12. He would have been 24 Grand Slams, wouldn't he? And they go, oh my God, yeah, Laver's the greatest, Laver's the greatest. But he was playing the amateur era.
What about
not the greatest. So,
what about Ken Rosewall, who missed 11 years and 55 slams? How many could have he won instead of 8?
That's right. So we know these things, so we can put it in perspective, and so we can also look at the technology that's come about, and the way that Rafa has been so dominant with this new technology, lighter rackets, powerful rackets, more spin. He's created a game that we've never seen before. We've never ever seen before in the history. It's sort of like Guillermo Vilas, but another level of power and spin, with top spin and endurance. And we've never seen that before. Never seen anybody hit a left-handed forehand like that in the history of the game. And so that is really hard to combat. So we've seen he's developed something new. Federer is sort of old school, but does it in a new school way. And and Djokovic is probably somewhere in between, where he's at his best. At his best, he is unstoppable, and we've seen that a few times. Particularly the Australian Open, when he's just absolutely unstoppable when he plays that way. He serves big, hits line after line. When he comes to the net, you don't know what's going to happen, but now he's very confident at the net. He can volley pretty well, but you certainly wouldn't put him as the better volleyer of those 3 or 4. Andy Murray's got very good volleys as well. Stan Wawrinka's decent technique, though misses every short soft ball because of his strings. But so it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. But look, it's. Who would I pay a ticket to go and watch? I mean, it would be Roger probably first, Rafa second, and Novak third or fourth, probably after Wawrinka or somebody like that. Fognini is my favorite player. I love to watch. He actually is my number one favorite, because he hits the ball so smoothly, so effortlessly, and you never know if he's going to go crazy. But.
Yeah.
Same with Kyrgios, I suppose.
No, but it's true. Let's say that, when you talk about the head-to-head, some people say, well, the advantage for Nadal in confronting himself with Federer was that sometimes Nadal was losing earlier in the hard courts, and so he didn't play Federer so many times at the end of a tournament on grass or at the end of a tournament on hard court. While, of course, many of those duels between those two were played on clay. In that case, Nadal was too much superior. So that also changes the head-to-head numbers, so.
Roger's incredibly consistent. I mean, there's no doubts that he's been. I think his greatest record is the quarterfinals in Grand Slams in a row. What was his record? Something
57.
Like 36. I think he made 36 in a row, and
Oh, yeah.
and semis, 23 semis in a row. Just amazing consistency.
I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal. I think of all the records, I know he might say that, you know, he was the oldest Grand Slam winner. That might be his greatest record. But I think as a player who had no consistency whatsoever and always admired players like Ken Rosewall or somebody, Jimmy Connors, who could keep going and playing and not seem to get injured. And as I said, biomechanically, look, if you're coaching the way, you wouldn't really necessarily coach the way Roger Federer does, like John McEnroe. You wouldn't say, or Jimmy Connors, you wouldn't coach like that, because not only a few people can play that way. There's so many different sort of technical nuances that Federer has, but the way that he moves is absolutely phenomenal. You know, Rafa's probably got more power. You know, if you had to do a leg press or you know, weights or something, Rafa would probably have more power. But for his body, Federer is just moves so lightly. He's very fine. If you look, I know he jokes about his left hand where he has his watch on, but. And I often say this to people. I say his left wrist is smaller than my granddaughter's. His bones are obviously bones are very strong, otherwise they'd break. But he's kind of light with his muscles on it, and so it's like a racing car with a light chassis, with a light frame, with this massive engine on it. And it can just go forever and not have any problems. And that's the way I sort of see Federer as like the electric car, where I see Rafa like the Ferrari, where it's often in the workshop, it's often broken down, but when it goes, you can hear it and you go, whoa, look at that. There's nothing better than hearing that. But all of a sudden you see this electric car go past. What was that? Well, that was Roger Federer.
Look, I would love to talk to you for I don't know how long more, and Steve too, because when we talk about tennis, we would never finish. But I just want to ask two final questions. One is, because we didn't have the time to talk about you as a musician or as a somebody very fond of music, like Iron Maiden, Rolling Stones, and also you saw all the other players, the Wilander, McEnroe, playing guitars or different instruments. I'd like to know who impressed you more. I mean, I've seen all of you also playing music. I went to listen to concerts of Yannick Noah. I enjoyed them all. I'd like you to give a little profile of each of you on this field. I mean,
I don't know if you want that, but I mean, Yannick is a professional and he's done an unbelievable job. I remember his first concerts he did for his charity in Bercy for his Les Enfants charity. And that was fantastic. That's right. He's, he's fantastic. He sold out the stadium there and raised so much money. And that was when he started getting into his music. And he asked me to come over, and I said, can I bring some of my musicians from London? So I brought over this seriously professional band, and I jumped and I played along with them. I just play along. I'm not very good. I can play okay. John and I probably play similar sort of standard. And I think Mats was joined there, and Juan Aguilera was playing as well. If you remember Juan, he was playing, and Yannick was like, "Wow, that's a really good band." You know what? I said, "Yeah." I said, "The whole idea is get a really good band and then play along with them." And then he I think he took that a little bit, and he loved his music. He's got great rhythm. So, but I think a lot of this came from Vitas Gerulaitis. Vitas was certainly. I love Vitas. We all actually miss him a lot. But he was the sort of first rock star for me. And we used to play against each other. Funny enough, I was just we did the first pro match with Brandon Nakashima literally yesterday. And I played Vitas at this club in Newport Beach. And I remember distinctly Vitas, one day I played Vitas 1986, 87. And Vitas had a guitar, and he was hanging out with all these rock stars, and he said, "Come to my room. I'll show you how to play a song." And I came in his room, and he was playing all these great songs. I'm like, "Wow, you're really good." And he was good. He was really good. He said, "Yeah, Eddie Van Halen taught me this one, and the guys from Bad Company, they told me this one, and Rolling Stones actually showed me this one." I'm like, "Oh, no way, wow." And he said, "Yeah, have this guitar. Yeah, you can have this guitar." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, he was just the rock star. I said, "Yeah, I'll get another one from Eddie tomorrow or next week or whatever." He was the rock star, and he got us all into the music. And he used to have that Hard Rock Cafe party he started up, which I continued on in London. So Vitas was the real rock star, and he could play, and but we all enjoy it. But Yannick of course is a real professional. But we get together with Mats, and we play some charity thing or at a Legends event where we get up on stage and play, and we make a horrible noise. We really do. We don't practice much, but we have a lot of fun.
Listen, and then another question is about you being a coach, because we spoke a long time about you as a tennis player, a champion, Davis Cup player, and so on. Well, I'd like to know about you being coach, because you've been coaching different players, and also all the academies. I don't know if they're still all on, but I read that you have, or you had, I don't know, one in Koh Samui, another one in San Vincent, another one in Santa Lucia, another one in Dominican Republic, and now in California. So first of all, I don't know how you can manage to do all of this. Second, I'd like to know where actually I can meet you there. If one day I decide to go to one of your academy, what should I do? I mean, and how much expensive are these academies? Do I have enough money to afford it?
For you, I'll do a serious discount. No, I really had started off at a big tennis academy in Australia, and that was off the back of working with Mark Philippoussis and Gavin Hopper, who was a former top coach, Monica Seles, and I worked with Tommy Haas, and he's Australian, and we worked together with Philippoussis. He did well. I got to the Australian Open final, got to top 10, US Open final, sorry. Got to top 10. And then
Wimbledon too.
Wimbledon, yeah, I wasn't working with him then.
Okay.
That was afterwards. So I decided to get off the tour and go to Australia, and we set up a tennis academy there. From then, I started planning a few academies with a company. Unfortunately, the company had their troubles, and they went bankrupt. Oh. So we only really got one other academy up in the Caribbean at a resort. So the others, it's a lot of work, as you said. How can you be at them all? And I think that is one of the problems. Though I'd loved coaching. At the end of my career, towards the end of my career, I realized that I had all these injuries, and I needed to fix my biomechanics. And I talked about how Federer moves and biomechanics. So I went and I studied and worked with a top biomechanist for about 2 years, and rebuilding my game. Completely opened my eyes to tennis. Completely changed my whole concept of how tennis should be played. How there's still a mental side of the game, but it opened my eyes to something completely new, and I became. I think, again, obsessed by it. I changed my technique. If you saw my technique back in '87 and you see it during the Legend, not now, because I'm got some injuries, not playing so well, but so many of the guys in the Legends tour looked at me and said, "You're playing much better than you used to. My serve is 20% harder. My forehand is 50% better." And I said, "Yeah," because I went back but I didn't have an opportunity at the end of my career to play, and I just had enough. But I learned a lot. So, my ideas on tennis has certainly changed. So you have to stay up with the modern technology, modern biomechanics, and I think so. I did that with Philippoussis. I did that with Rosetsky, Greg Rosetsky. We completely changed his serve. He had one of the greatest serves of all time. We had to change it because he had a foot problem and he couldn't push off. So he changed his whole stance, and that worked. I did the same thing with Coco Vandeweghe in the last few years. And, Coco, she got the top 10 and won the Fed Cup. And now I'm working with Brandon Nakashima.
Did it change a lot for you to coach a man to coach a woman? I mean, how was it difficult to adjust? And if today you could choose, you would prefer to coach a woman or a man?
I think there's room in the women's tour to be successful. If you have a good athlete who's motivated and has good technique, I think they can be a very good player quickly. And we've seen that with players coming from nowhere. You know, they just come from nowhere and win Grand Slams. And we've seen, you know, obviously Barty, we've seen Osaka, just to name two, recently. But they have a chance. Men, you can't do that. The margins are so small. The ladies, if you have a good run and you're full of confidence, you can win a Grand Slam. So I think there is more opportunities in the women's game, though it is very tricky. It's tricky to get the right balance of motivation. They have to be happy. I think that really it's the way I like to explain it. And it might be a little simplifying here and a bit Australian, so bear with me. But when you coach a woman player and it's after the match and the player's lost, you know, cooling down, and you have to come up very quietly and say, "Bad luck, no luck, you know, you're unfortunate today. You know, I'm proud of you though. You've really done a good job. I'm proud of you, but you know, you're unlucky today and." Don't worry, everything will be okay. We'll get on the court. We'll work on it. We'll practice. You know, go home, have a nice relax, and we'll talk about it in the morning. Have a really nice dinner. Enjoy yourself. Have a good sleep. Watch a movie. And I'm here if you need to call. I'm on the end of the phone. Anytime you need me, you call me, and we'll get started tomorrow or the next day. Or have a day off. Actually, have a day off. Just enjoy yourself. Okay? That's the way you talk to a woman. A guy after the match, you come up and you go, "Shit, you're back in. You fucking missed that shot by this much. Don't worry, you'll be okay tomorrow." Good talk, coach. Yeah, no worries. That's kind of what it's like. Shit, you're back in. Fucking line call. Damn, you had that. Yeah, I know. I fucking had. Shit. Okay, good. We'll talk tomorrow. That's
too funny. Yeah, you're great.
I like both. It's a real challenge.
Well, it's also from a journalistic point of view, when you had to make an interview. If you interview a man, it's completely different than to interview a woman. I remember, I don't want to mention exactly who was the player, but I remember the female player, very famous and strong player. Former number one in the world. You had to say first a lot of compliments. You know that today you look really great. I see you really attractive, beautiful. I mean, okay, don't forget if you lost, but you really look nice, you know? Then at the end of the interviews, you could ask anything. But at the beginning, the first 5 questions had to be very smooth, soft, and, you know, helping her to relax.
Yes, that's true. And in a way, I suppose that's the correct way to talk to people. But maybe they've got it right and we have it wrong. We probably have. So I know.
But you know what, Ubaldo? You know what? Just a quick thing at the end here. Pat, you may not know it, but he's quite a good interviewer himself. And I was lucky enough to be on the receiving end once 4 years ago out at the Westside Tennis Club. Pat's doing a show. I don't remember the name of the show, Pat, for CNN.
Yeah.
But Pat, they asked me to come out because there was a history feature about Westside Tennis Club in Forest Hills, and they needed a few people. And Pat conducted the interviews, and believe me, Ubaldo, far better than either one of us could ever do it. It was very relaxed.
Well, it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult.
But Pat had a nice, relaxed manner. We sat at the bar. He threw the questions my way. It was a lot of fun back in 2016.
Well, we need people like you guys to remind us of what tennis is about. And I think, you know, we get mixed up in social media and, as I said, the ATP and the WTA trying to promote all the young players. But, you know, without your knowledge, we don't really know the history of the game. We don't know who the greatest players of all time. We don't know that, one of the they say who the greatest player of all time. I say, well, is the greatest player of all time somebody who plays with a small racket, wooden racket, and can hit the ball in the middle all the time, or a bigger racket that you can hit on the edge and still get more power? I go, with a smaller racket, of course. Well, there you go. You know, so Rod Laver, Ken Rosewall, Jimmy Connors, these guys, then maybe they're more talented than Federer and Nadal and Djokovic. So, but you know, you guys, you know the history of the game. And I'm fascinated by it. It was the only subject in school I didn't fail was history. So I like it. So I always love any opportunity to sit down and pick your brains.
Well, you know, you're talking about numbers, stats, and things like that. But for instance, when I hear that Roger Federer may never reach the 109 tournaments won by Connors, to be honest, I don't find it fair, because I know that quite a few of those tournaments Connors won were not really real tournaments. They were.
Yeah, absolutely right. Ubaldo, I couldn't agree.
So the ATP will never change now, because it's too many years we have been saying that Connors won 109 tournaments. Nobody's going to say one day, oh no, they were not 109, they were 104, just to give you an example. And so everybody will keep saying, oh, Federer will not make 109, but you know, so the history says something else.
Yeah, you know, I think what Ubaldo is saying, Pat, is there has to be some interpreting. And with Connors, there were a lot, you remember hearing, I'm sure, about the Bill Reardon circuit, and Bill was Jimmy's manager, and he ran, these tournaments were, I don't even know if they were comparable to ATP 250s right now. The fields were pretty weak, so Jimmy did get a lot of cheap titles mixed in. And in fairness, he won a lot of big ones too, and 8 majors and a lot of great titles, but his record was padded by those Reardon tournaments. So in a sense, right, I agree with you, Ubaldo, that maybe it's, even if Federer doesn't break that record, it's understandable.
Yeah, and I think the Labour had won something like 200 events, but so a lot of these tournaments were country tournaments in Australia, and
well, those are counting, but also they're counting the Pro Tour events that don't officially, you know, during his days after turning pro in '62, before Open Tennis, when they barnstorm, and so counting some of those events. That's trickier territory historically, but you're right. He won a ton of events that theoretically should count.
And also, I'm not sure if during certainly my year, I caught the end of it, the WCT tour, the Lamar Hunt's tour.
Yeah.
And they were big tournaments. I don't know though they counted as proper official tournaments, because the MIPTC, which is
eventually I think most of those did count eventually. But you're right, and you're pointing to something important, because Ubaldo and I used to go to the WCT finals in Dallas every year. There was a period where the WCT finals for the top 8, you know, was similar to the ATP championships at the end of the year now, but the guys that qualified and winning Dallas was comparable to winning a Grand Slam tournament.
Yeah, it was. That was one of the big things that I got to play at once, and that was a big thrill that I qualified. We were trying like mad. It was almost bigger than, because they had more money. It was bigger than the Masters, or Masters as we called it.
Right.
And
so they play from January to May just to qualify. It was a great event. Lamar did a terrific job with that circuit.
Yeah, and I want to finish on a light note. In Dallas, maybe because I was young, while Steve Flink was already old, I was going to parties organized by Vitas Gerulaitis, John Newcomb, other players who, when there were some girls missing, they were just dropping with the cars in front of a discotheque, and in 5 minutes were filling up the place. You know, bringing back to the Ramada Inn Hotel, where Vitas had a huge suite, and organizing parties with feedback. I don't know, a lot of players who really wanted to have a lot of fun, and I am homesick. How can I say, nostalgic of those times, because it doesn't happen anymore. I was able to introduce one of the 5 wives to Ili Nastase once, and she has never forgiven me for that. So anyway, listen, it was great. It was I had a lot of fun. I'm sure Steve had it too. And once or twice, me and Steve, we agreed. We agreed on the same subject, which means that probably we were both wrong. And and I want to thank you really very much for your time, Pat. You have always been my favorite player to watch, to listen, and I am really I really want to thank you a lot for this time.
Well,
And
thanks.
Thank you, Pat. I enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us.
I wish you the best also in your career as coaching. And let me know if you find that with Nakashima, is that the name? If you have great success, I hope you will give me a chance to interview him as soon as he gets. Well, how is he ranked now? How is he ranked?
He's gone from nothing to 212. So he's in the qualifying of the slams now. He did that in 6 months. So
how old is he? How old is he?
He's 18.
18. So like you were in 1983.
Yeah. So he's got a lot of talent. So I think he'll be a name to look out for.
Okay.
How far he'll go, it's hard to know. But
okay. Listen, thanks a lot. And I stop recording and see you soon. I hope to see you soon in next to some play tennis. You know,
yes.
Yeah,
I know. I hope so. I think so.